We all prefer things a certain way, like groceries. If you want groceries just how you like them, you gotta try Instacart. They have a new preference picker that lets you pick how ripe or unripe you want your bananas. Shoppers can see your preferences upfront, helping guide their choices. Because when it comes to groceries, the details matter. Instacart. Get groceries just how you like.
When we think about the causes of the First World War, it is tempting to follow the rather standardized version that we would learn in GCSE history or A-level history, or whatever the the version of education is wherever you're listening to this. The idea of kind of Anglo-French and German imperial rivalries that develop tensions. There are arms races, secret alliances, and then bump, there is an inciting incident in Sarajevo in 1914 with the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. But that often steers us away from looking at the complexities of the Balkans and the pressures that lead up to the assassination itself. And it steers us away from looking at one key issue, which is the decline of the Ottoman Empire, which is obviously one thing that I've been talking about quite a bit. So what we're going to do today is we're going to explore, or begin to explore, the Balkan Wars that predate the crisis in Sarajevo and the beginnings of World War One. Okay, so we're reading again today from Eugene Rogan's The Fall of the Ottomans. The reason I like this book, having read several on the last decades of the Ottoman Empire, is that principally it's so well written and well researched, and so kind of fluid in its analysis. It's Eugene Rogan's literary, if you will, style of kind of exposition is pretty peerless from the reading that I've done, and I do recommend, if this is something that you're interested in, that The Fall of the Ottomans as a single volume is well worth getting. So Eugene Rogan writes, the Balkan states had all once been part of the Ottoman Empire. In the course of the 19th century, nationalism took hold among the diverse ethnic and religious communities of southeastern Europe. The European powers actively encouraged these nationalist movements as they sought to secede from the Ottoman Empire, creating volatile client states. The Kingdom of Greece was the first to secure full independence in 1830 after a decade of war. Serbia gained international recognition as a principality under Ottoman suzerainty in 1829 and secured full independence in the 1878 Congress of Berlin. Also, at Berlin, Montenegro gained its independence and Bulgaria secured its autonomy under Ottoman rule, achieving full independence in September 1908. None of the independent Balkan states was satisfied with the territory under its control. Each aspired to land still under Ottoman rule in Albania, Macedonia, and Thrace. The Ottomans, for their part, had grown dismissive of their former Balkan subject peoples' claims and underestimated the danger they posed to Ottoman rule in the empire's last remaining European provinces. What seems to be the case with kind of nascent kind of nationalism that stems from national independence struggles is that it is a very, very hard, it is very, very hard to satisfy. That in across the Balkans, you see countries that become independent, and within their societies and civil society, there isn't this broad consensus of okay, well, let's quit while we're ahead. Let us now have we've managed to gain Serbia. Let's be happy with that. The idea of Greater Serbia and Greater Greece and expansionism was there from the beginnings. And in Christopher Steele's The Sleepwalkers, he talks a lot about this and about Serbian folk culture and the idea that we weren't just being liberated from the Turks, but the whole point was to sort of gain back territories lost to other peoples of the Balkans, and this was to be done, and also territories that were claimed by the Habsburgs, and that the journey towards national greatness only begins with liberation from the Ottomans. It's an ongoing process. Eugene Rogan writes, Ottoman complacency was shattered as the Balkan states seized the opportunity that the Italian-Turkish War presented to satisfy their territorial ambitions. In October 1912, Montenegro, Serbia, Greece, and Bulgaria declared war on the Ottoman Empire in quick succession. From the outset, the Balkan allies enjoyed numerical and strategic superiority over their former Ottoman overlords. The combined forces of the Balkan states totaled 715,000 men, compared to only 320,000 Ottoman soldiers in the field. The Greeks used their maritime supremacy over the Ottomans to their advantage. Not only did they annex Crete and occupy a number of Aegean islands, but they also used their navy to prevent the Ottomans from reinforcing their troops by sea. On the 8th of November, Greek forces took Salonika, the birthplace of the Young Turk revolution. They also occupied much of southern Albania. The Serbs and the Montenegrins attacked Macedonia and Albania from the north, completing the conquest of those territories. Kosovo fell to the Serbs on the 23rd of October. The Bulgarians faced the most heated engagements with the Turks. They managed to break through the first Ottoman line of defence at Kirklareli, and on the 24th of October, on the second line at Lulebagaj on the 2nd of November, before pressing on to Catalca, just 40 miles from Istanbul. The Ottoman defenders of the Edirne, ancient Adrianople, a city in modern Turkey near Greece and Bulgaria, was left surrounded and under siege when the Porte sued for an armistice in early December 1912. Within 2 months of surrendering Libya to Italian rule, the Ottoman army had been thoroughly routed and looked certain to lose the last of its European provinces. Bear in mind, as we talked about previously when we looked at the Italian conquest of Libya, one of the reasons for giving up Libya without much of a fight was to preserve other core parts of the Ottoman Empire. And obviously that fails as well. The Ottoman government was headed by the Liberal Prime Minister Kamil Pasha. The CUP and the Liberals were long-standing rivals, and Kamil Pasha had deliberately excluded the CUP from his cabinet. Facing imminent military defeat, the Liberals and the Unionists took diametrically opposing views. The liberals advocated peace to avoid further territorial losses and to protect Istanbul from risk. The Unionists, on the other hand, called for vigorous renewal of war to recover essential Ottoman territory, Edirne first and foremost. When the Unionists criticised the conduct of the war, Kemal Pasha ordered a clampdown on CUP branches, closed their newspapers, and arrested a number of leading Unionists. Enver was caught up in these military and political tensions, Enver Pasha this is, when he returned to Istanbul from fighting the Italians in Libya. I find myself in a totally hostile environment, he wrote at the end of this December 1912. The whole cabinet, as well as the ministers of war, are being very friendly, but I know they are having me followed by spies. He made a number of visits to the front at Catalca and came away convinced that the Ottomans were in a better position than the Bulgarians. Not surprisingly, Enver became an outspoken advocate of continuing the war to relieve Edirne. And if the cabinet renders Edirne without any effort, I will quit the army. I will openly call for war, and I do not know, or rather do not wish to say, what I might do. So this is kind of insurrectionary sort of language. Convinced that Kemal Pasha was on the verge of a peace deal that would surrender Edirne to foreign rule, Enver took drastic action. On the 23rd of January,
Picture chicken nuggets in your head. Okay, now forget them. Because Taco Bell's crispy chicken nuggets are here. And they're nothing like the nuggets you know. All white meat chicken, coated in tortilla chips for that signature Taco Bell crunch. A nugget like that calls for a sauce that can keep up. Introducing Hidden Valley Diablo Ranch. The iconic ranch you love, fired up with Taco Bell Diablo sauce. Bold meets bolder. Ranch meets Diablo, and it works. Crispy chicken nuggets from Taco Bell, a brand new classic. At participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only, while supplies last.
Hi, I'm Katie Duke, and I've been a nurse for over 20 years. Listen, I think style and confidence only get better with age. And that is why I love Figs. These scrubs are built to last. They fit perfectly. They feel amazing, and the quality is just wow! My favorite color? Burgundy. It's chic, it's timeless, and it's even the same color as my apartment. So there's that. Get 15% off your first order at wearfigs.com with the code FIGSRX.
1913, 10 armed conspirators galloped through the cobbled streets of Istanbul to the offices of the Sublime Porte. As they burst into the cabinet meeting, Enver and his men exchanged gunfire with the Grand Vizier's guards. 4 men, including the Ministry of War, Nazim Pasha, were killed in the shootout before Enver pressed his pistol to Kemal Pasha's head to demand the Grand Vizier's resignation. It was all over in a quarter of an hour, Enver later confided. He then made his way to the palace to inform the Sultan of his actions and to seek the nomination of a new Grand Vizier. Sultan Mehmed V named a veteran statesman and former general, Mahmud Sevket Pasha, to form a national unity government. Within 4 hours of the notorious raid on the Sublime Porte, a new cabinet had been appointed, tasked with restoring stability to the war-shattered politics of the Ottoman Empire. Though its members had led the coup against Kemal Pasha's government, the CUP did not exploit the opportunity to seize political power. So the Unionists had kind of overthrown the liberals and yet failed to do so at the same time. And it's interesting, isn't it, when you look at the parallels between the Balkan states and the actual Ottoman Empire, the kinds of violent nationalist resurgence that you see in both kind of interestingly mirror one another. And as we've seen, the CUP are this kind of modernizing force, much in the sort of a similar way to like the Meiji Restoration in Japan. The idea that a certain faction within the kind of the ruling elite needs to seize power and to modernize and to secularize and to direct and a kind of an elite project. This is not kind of plebeian in any way. This is not like a people's revolution or anything. This is more of a kind of a coup between elites in the interests of a kind of a robust secular warlike modernity to defend actually the lineage of the past. Though its members had led the coup against Kemal Pasha's government, the CUP did not exploit the opportunity to seize power. Mahmud Sevket Pasha was sympathetic to the CUP, but he was no unionist. The new Grand Vizier was encouraged to create a non-partisan coalition to provide stability and unity after the factionalism and military disasters of the recent past. Only 3 unionists were appointed to his cabinet, all of them moderates. The future triumvirs of the Ottoman Empire, Talat, Enver and Kemal, remained out of government for the moment. Kemal accepted the post of military governor of Istanbul, Talat continued as Secretary General of the CUP, and Enver went to war. Having had this kind of long and militant experience in Libya. When war resumed, it went badly for the Ottoman Empire. The armistice expired without agreement between the belligerents on the 3rd of February 1913. With key cities under siege and no line of communication to resupply or relieve them, the Ottomans watched helplessly as one by one their last European possessions fell to the ambitious Balkan states. The Greeks took the Macedonian town of Janina on the 6th of March. Montenegrin forces pinned down Ottoman defenders at Iskodra in Albania. Yet the cruelest blow came when the Bulgarians starved the defenders of Edirne into capitulation on the 28th of March, a moment of profound national crisis for the Ottoman Empire as a whole. Mahmud Sevket Pasha offered an immediate truce shortly after the fall of Edirne. Negotiations resumed between the Ottomans and the Balkan states in London at the end of May, and the full peace treaty was concluded under British mediation on the 30th of May 1913. In the Treaty of London, the Ottoman government signed away 60,000 square miles of its territory and nearly 4 million inhabitants, sundering all its European possessions except a small portion of eastern Thrace, the hinterlands of Istanbul, defined by the Midi-Enzes line.
If you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt, medical bills, or personal loans, help is here. More and more Americans turn to credit cards to get by. National Debt Relief is helping qualified clients reduce what they owe. For many, continuing to struggle making minimum monthly payments could take years to pay off. National Debt Relief has already helped over 550,000 Americans reduce their debt by negotiating directly with their creditors. When you call, you'll be amazed at how much you can save and how quickly you can become debt-free. If you want off the debt treadmill, visit nationaldebtrelief.com today. You don't need to declare bankruptcy, and you may qualify for significant debt relief. To find out what savings you may qualify for, simply visit nationaldebtrelief.com. That's nationaldebtrelief.com.
Hi, I'm Melissa Banashai, CEO and co-founder of Baked by Melissa. As a mom, I find deciding what to make for dinner the hardest decision of my day. That's why I'm partnering with Blue Apron to bring you delicious and nutritious dinners that are quick and easy like your mom. Just kidding. Your mom's amazing. Get 35% off your first order at Blue Apron with promo code Melissa. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more. Okay, love you. Bye.
As in the Italian-Turkish War, the Ottomans suffered total defeat. Now, it's interesting to consider, when we think of Britain's entry into the First World War, we think of this kind of halcyon period of Edwardian stability and peace, which is obviously never quite like that. These kind of salad days that end in the late summer of 1914. As far as the Ottomans are concerned, there is no such thing for them. There was a period of constant crisis for essentially the best part of a decade, all the way up to 1914. In Britain, there is the rising problem of Ireland and Irish nationalism, and the prospect of civil war in Ireland. And as kind of the various sort of kind of historians of the period, the sort of strange death of liberal England historians, and A.J.B. Taylor, they kind of obviously argue that the First World War ends this period of crisis by creating an external crisis, and it's actually quite a kind of a unifying thing, which, again, a thesis that's come under a lot of scrutiny. But the beginnings of the First World War for the Ottoman Empire follow a long period of war and crisis on an enormous scale. Losing Libya was nothing compared to ceding Albania, Macedonia, and Thrace. Since being conquered from the Byzantine Empire 5 centuries earlier, these European territories had been the economic and administrative heart of the Ottoman world. Again, Libya had been something of a backwater. This had been something worth losing if you were going to preserve everything else. They ranked among the most prosperous and developed provinces of the empire. The loss of revenues was compounded by the high cost of the First Balkan War to the Ottoman treasury. Thousands of refugees needed resettlement, and disease swept the squalid camps. The government also faced tremendous expenses to rebuild the Ottoman army after losses in men and material incurred through the two failed wars. Perhaps the greatest obstacle the Ottomans faced was one of public morale. It was bad enough to lose a war to a relatively advanced European power like Italy, but neither the Ottoman army nor the general public could accept defeat at the hands of the small Balkan states that had once been part of their empire. So then the small Balkan states fielded 750,000 soldiers, and they fielded more soldiers than the Italians had. The Bulgar, the Serb, the Greek, our subjects of 5 centuries, whom we have despised, have defeated us, wrote Yusuf Akura, a young Turk intellectual. This reality, which we could not conjure up even in our imaginations, will open our eyes if we are not entirely dead. Throughout the 19th century, pessimistic Europeans had labelled the Ottoman Empire a sick man of Europe. Even the most optimistic Young Turks could not rule out the sick man's demise by the end of the First Balkan War. Now, that aside, the experience of the British and the French fighting the Ottoman Empire during the First World War was a real culture shock, because actually the Ottoman Empire fights exceedingly well and defends itself exceedingly well, and as Sean McMeekin in Ottoman Endgame points out, were it not for the Ottoman Empire's forays into Armenia fighting Russia, then it's entirely possible that the Ottoman Empire might not have collapsed during the First World War. And the actual Russian-Armenian front is a very interesting one, and kind of leads to a demise of both powers simultaneously. So there's almost the Ottomans are kind of like Schrodinger's empire, you know, the low self-belief in the Ottoman Empire. Sometimes it actually isn't reflected by facts on the ground. They were facing enormous odds in Macedonia and in Albania and Bulgaria, and they are facing and yet when faced with the British and the French during the First World War, they fight exceedingly well at Gallipoli, and they fight exceedingly well against sort of British incompetence in Mesopotamia. So I'm going to end there in just a moment. I'm going to be doing an event on Sunday, and I'll be posting for our American history, our American history masterclass. I'll be posting the masterclass recording along with the Russian masterclass recording, and then we're moving on in March to do Germany, and April we'll be doing Maoist China. So I will catch you on the next Explaining History podcast. I'm hoping you find this Ottoman little mini series I'm doing useful and interesting, and we'll be branching out to look at a couple of other texts as well. Yeah, take care, and I'll catch you on the next Explaining History podcast. All the best. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Explaining History. This podcast is an independent production, and it's listener support that keeps these conversations going week after week. If you find value in the show and want to help cover the costs of research and production, please consider making a contribution. You can join our community on Patreon or make a one-off donation. Just follow the links in the show notes for this episode. Every bit of support is truly appreciated. Thanks again for listening.